Good morning. Personally, for me, this is early, 10 a.m., so thank you everyone for coming out. Oh my god, cool people right there, guys. Oh, and Taylor too.
All the people are cool.
Everyone's cool, yeah. So welcome everyone, thank you for coming. Today we will be talking about Texas. Hopefully everyone can see that. So what is Texas? Who can tell me what Texas is? Texas is a state. It is which state?
A southern state.
Yeah, it is, thank you. It is a southern state in the United States. It shares a border with which country?
Mexico.
With Mexico, awesome, yeah.
It belonged to Mexico.
It did, we're actually going to talk about that. Yeah. Can't talk about Texas without Mexico, so. Alright, what are some stereotypes that we know about Texas? Texas has a lot of stereotypes. Cowboys. Sasha. Guns.
Desert.
Desert.
Everything is bigger.
Everything is bigger. That's another great one. So,
It's a homeland of Sheldon Cooper.
that too. So, some Texas stereotypes. Cowboys, desert, country music, love our guns, and a lot of Texans are also very religious. I personally am not very religious, but it's very common in Texas. So some of these stereotypes are true. Some of them are not super true. There are cowboys in Texas. I'm not a cowboy. I teach English in Russia. But there are a lot of cowboys in Texas. And we do have desert. However, the desert in Texas is not all of this. The desert in Texas is this. Just this little part right here. So all of this is like forest and grassland hills, so only this is desert. Guns, that is a very true stereotype. Many Texans have guns. My brother has a gun, my father has many guns, my mom has a gun. So those people in Texas do have guns. And country music. Texans do really like our country music. I'm not the biggest fan of country music, but I'm not opposed to it. I mean, if you grew up in Texas, you can't not like some country music. It's just a thing. So, for reference, this is where Texas is. We have Mexico down here, this other country right here, and then Canada, and then Texas right here. Alright, so first we're going to learn a little bit about the history of Texas. We have this expression in Texas, 6 flags over Texas. This is because throughout the history of Texas, Texas has been under the control of 6 different governments, 6 different national governments. The first one we have is Spain, then France, Mexico, Texas as its own country, the Confederacy, and finally the United States. So we're going to learn a little bit about each one of these. So starting with Spain. In 1528, the first Spanish explorer, Alvaro Núñez Cabeza de Vaca, landed in Texas and began exploring it. He didn't do very much there. He came, looked around, went back to Spain. It was over 100 years later before the next Spanish explorer returned to Texas and began to build settlements. Does everyone know what a settlement is? Yeah, okay, cool. Just making sure. Cool. So we all know what a settlement is. About 30 years later, in 1718, the first Texan city was founded, officially founded, San Antonio. San Antonio is right here, towards southern Texas. And then in 1821, Mexico won its independence from Spain, which is important because Texas and Mexico used to be the same country, as was mentioned earlier. Texas and Mexico were both the same country called New Spain. They were both under the control of Spain, called New Spain. So, before we learn about Mexico's history with Texas, France. France has the smallest amount of history with Texas. Texas was only under the control of France for 3 years, and it wasn't even all of Texas. It was just this northern part here. So the United States bought a lot of land from France in a treaty called the Louisiana Purchase, which is all of that land there. All of that land the United States bought from France. Part of that land had Texas in it. So Spain sold northern Texas to France. France sold it to the United States. And then in 1803, the United States sold it back to Spain. So went back and forth a lot. Mexico. Mexico and Texas have a very long, very rough history. We sometimes are friends, we're sometimes enemies, but we try and keep things usually pleasant, as much as we can, usually. So, in 1821, New Spain won its independence from Spain and becomes Mexico. This is kind of like, if you know in United States history, the United States used to be part of the United Kingdom, won its independence, became the United States. Exact same thing with Mexico. Mexico was New Spain with Texas, broke off, became Mexico. In 1822, Mexico gave an American permission to move to Texas and start a settlement there. This American's name was Stephen F. Austin. Why is that name important? Why is that name important?
There is a city, Austin.
There is a city, Austin. Is it an important city?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty important. Yeah, you're correct. Yeah, Austin is our capital. So Austin was named after this man, Stephen F. Austin, who was the first American to start a settlement in Texas. In 1824, the Constitution of Mexico made Texas an official state called Coahuila y Texas. And then things were good for a couple years until 1803, when Mexico made it illegal for Americans to immigrate to Texas. The reason for this was that Mexico and Texas started having some problems. Texas was still part of Mexico, but they kind of had their own personality, let's say. One of the big issues was that Texas still had slavery. Texas used slaves for their economy. They had a really strong economy, and a lot of their economy was based off of slavery. Mexico, many years before that, had made slavery illegal. And they said that Texas could keep slavery, but as the years continued, they said, okay, maybe we should now make slavery illegal in Texas too. But Texas knew that if that happened, their economy would be pretty bad, so they tried to resist that. There were also some other issues. Mexico started making taxes higher and higher and higher on Texas. And of course, more taxes also means less money for people, so they did not like that either. So in an attempt to make Texas more peaceful, the Mexican government sent a bunch of army and military into Texas to try and make them think about not being so crazy and revolting and everything. In 1833, a Mexican general, a very famous and powerful Mexican general, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, becomes president of Mexico. This is very important because Santa Anna did not really like Texas. So, this started a war. In 1836, Texas declared its independence from Mexico. Of course, just because a country or region says that it is independent does not mean that it is. So Texas said that it was independent from Mexico. Mexico did not like this because to Mexico, from Mexico's perspective, Texas was still a state in Mexico. So in 1836, the Mexican president Santa Anna declares war on Texas and invaded the state of Texas. The first battle of this war was the Battle of the Alamo. The Alamo is located here in San Antonio. So Santa Anna came up from Mexico City here into Texas and had the first battle here at San Antonio at this building. This building is the Alamo. It was a very long, very bloody, very violent fight. Texas did end up losing this battle, and it was a particularly bad defeat and loss for Texas because even after Texans surrendered, they knew they were going to lose. So Texans surrendered, they stopped fighting, but even after they stopped fighting and after they surrendered, the Mexican president, Santa Anna, still had everyone killed, all Texans killed who were at that battle. So they said we stopped fighting, and then they killed them all, which was very not honorable on the part of Mexico. Then the Battle of San Jacinto. So Santa Anna was here in San Antonio, and he moved with his army over here to about where Hьюстон is. Hьюstон did not exist at the time, but that's where the battle was. So the Battle of San Jacinto. There were two armies in Texas at the time. The one that fought in San Antonio, which was defeated and killed, and a second smaller army, which was located here around Hьюstон. So of course, after Santa Anna finished in San Antonio, he started moving east to defeat the last army of Texas here in Hьústон at San Jacinto, a place called San Jacinto, which is, San Jacinto is here. This is San Jacinto. The general on Texas's side was a man named Sam Hьústone, General Sam Hьústone. His name is also very important because after he won here, his name became the name of the city that would be founded after the battle. Nobody really knows how. We're not really sure still how, but General Sam Hьústone beat all of Mexico's army and captured their president with a smaller army than the one that was at the Alamo, which is pretty crazy. Yeah, again, we're not really sure how it happened. They, I guess, fought very bravely. We have this phrase, remember the Alamo, because as I said, the first battle was at the Alamo. Mexico killed all Texans who were there. So when Sam Hьústone ordered his attack on Mexico here, when all of the Texans raced into battle to fight Mexico, they were shouting this phrase, remember the Alamo, so that they would remember what happened here at San Antonio. It worked. They won, which was cool, because otherwise my state would still be part of Mexico, so it's nice. After Texas won its independence from Mexico and defeated Santa Anna, it became the Republic of Texas, its own country. In 1836, Sam Hьústone was elected the first president of Texas at the Capitol here in Austin. And in 1839, Austin became the official capital of the country of Texas. Texas was just a country like any other. It had its own money. You can see the money for the Republic of Texas right there. It also had its own passports. On the right, where it says Republic of Texas, is a passport. That passport used to be used so that Texans could go in between Texas and the United States, which is pretty crazy to think about, because of course now they're one country. And we call Texas, we have this phrase, the Lone Star State, which we still call Texas now, kind of a nickname for Texas, because Texas is the only state in the United States that was its own country before joining the United States. We also call it the Lone Star State because Texas had to fight for its independence without any help. When the other states in the United States fought the United Kingdom to become independent, they fought the United Kingdom together. There were like 13 states that fought the United Kingdom together. Texas fought Mexico by itself, without any help from anyone. So we're very proud of that fact, that we did that in one. The United States and the Confederacy. In 1846, Texas became the 28th state to join the United States of America. It is the only state to join the United States by treaty, so by mutual agreement between two countries to join. The other states won their independence from the United Kingdom, or in some cases like Alaska, were sold to the United States from a different country, Russia. Texas became a state in the United States for one pretty big reason. After it became its own country, its economy was not very good. It had just fought a war for independence, and it was kind of struggling. And inflation was very high. They needed more money. So they said, okay, we have two options. We can stay our own country and be a very poor country, or we can join the United States and be a wealthy state. They chose the second option. Of course, this was before that they knew that right under them was a bunch of oil, which of course oil is very valuable. After we found the oil, we realized that we could have survived as our country, and now we want to go back to being our own country, but the United States doesn't like that. In 1861, Texas, along with 10 other southern states, seceded from the United States to form the Confederacy. What was this period of United States history called? The Civil War. Yeah, awesome. So this was the United States Civil War between these states and these states. The war was fought over a couple things, the big one being slavery. This presentation is about Texas, not the Civil War. If you would like to know more about that, you should ask Zach. He knows all about that. In 1865, the Confederacy was defeated by the Union, and Texas, along with all of the other southern states, returned to the United States and became one country again. Alright, now we're going to look at some different cities in Texas. So, all the cities that we're going to look at are on this map here. I'm going to try and start from some of the smaller cities. All of these cities are big. All of these cities are the biggest cities in Texas, but start from kind of the smaller ones and go to the bigger ones. Alright, so, first city that we have here is El Paso. Has anyone heard of El Paso before? Yeah? Awesome. El Paso is right here. At the very, very tip of Texas. El Paso is in the middle of the desert. When you think of Texas and you think of like stereotypical Texas desert, you're thinking of El Paso. El Paso is what you're thinking of. El Paso is, of course, right here on the border with Mexico. And so here, Mexico, El Paso. Because El Paso is on the border with Mexico, their economies are very closely linked. 70% of El Paso speaks Spanish. My dad lives in El Paso. He does not speak Spanish, his wife does, my stepmom, and sometimes she has to translate for him because he does not speak Spanish. So, but 70% of the city does. Most of those 70% are bilingual in Spanish and English. So El Paso is crazy because even though you're in the United States, everywhere you go in the city, everything is in English and Spanish, everything. And you'll hear, if I walk through like a store or a mall in El Paso, I hear Spanish a lot of times more than English, which is crazy. El Paso is the largest border city in the United States. So of all of the cities along the border, it is the largest border city. It is also, though, one of the safest cities in the United States, which, if you know anything about the border between Mexico and Texas, it's kind of surprising that El Paso is so safe. There's a good reason for that. El Paso is home to the U.S. Border Patrol, the United States Border Patrol. That is the organization in charge of making sure that the borders between the United States and Mexico stay safe, and kind of Canada, but Canada doesn't really give us problems. So mostly Mexico and the United States. There are a lot of police and a lot of border patrol in El Paso. So most people try to not commit crimes in El Paso because they will very quickly be arrested and either thrown in prison or deported back to Mexico. So El Paso is pretty safe, surprisingly. El Paso has an average of 360 sunny days per year. Again, it is in the middle of the desert. Sometimes there's a little rain, not usually, and I have never been in El Paso where the whole day has been cloudy. Maybe like a little bit in the morning or a little bit in the evening, but it's usually just sun, 360 sunny days per year, which sounds really cool, but it also kind of gets a little tiring after a while.
What's the temperature, the average temperature?
In the summer, the average temperature is about 38 to 40 degrees. Yeah. That's the average. Sometimes it gets up to like 42, 43. So
44?
yeah, 44. So it's pretty hot. I personally like cooler weather. That's why I moved to Russia. So like not sun and cool weather. El Paso is 1,146 meters above sea level. So that's pretty tall. There's some mountains in the United States that are at that height. That's important because even though El Paso is in the desert, because it is so high up in elevation, they actually get snow. It can get kind of cold in the winter in El Paso. So, see if I can go back here one. So this is El Paso covered in snow. This is the mountain next to it, all covered in snow. El Paso is covered in snow. This is what usually happens at least once or twice in the winter. It's, as far as I know, the only city in the United States that is located both in a desert and gets snow in the winter, which just feels like a different reality. Like, it's crazy. There's like sand and desert, but then also snow.
Utah is another state. Sierra will argue.
Sierra lives in a different reality. All right, and El Paso is one other interesting fact. El Paso is on a different time zone than the rest of Texas. Texas is a very big state. All of Texas is on a time zone called Central Time. El Paso, just El Paso, that little bit right there, is on a time zone 1 hour behind the rest of Texas. Just El Paso. Which is really annoying because my mother lives here in Houston and my father lives here in El Paso, and phone calls are kind of difficult because someone will say, okay, call me at 3, and you have to remember, all right, it's the same state but different time zone. The reason that they do this is because, does anyone know what state is right here? What United States is right here? Yeah, awesome, right time. So New Mexico is right here. Mexico is right here, so New Mexico, Mexico. Both New Mexico and regular Mexico are on the same time zone that El Paso is. El Paso switched to that time zone because their economy is very closely linked to Mexico and New Mexico. El Paso is very far from all of the other major cities in Texas, so it does most of its business with either New Mexico or Mexico. And because of that, for economic reasons, it switched to their time. So, which is interesting. Also, again, because their economy is so closely linked, another part of the reason that so much of the city speaks Spanish. Dallas and Fort Worth. Dallas and Fort Worth are right here. They are very, very close together. And when we talk about Dallas and Fort Worth in Texas, sometimes we usually just kind of think of them as one like really big city rather than two separate cities. If you look at the picture on the upper left, Dallas and Fort Worth are separate, but they like connect in the middle. Again, so they're technically two separate cities, but kind of together. So for this presentation, I'm going to tell you about them as Texans see them, as kind of just like one big city. Fort Worth, not a lot happens there. It's mostly Dallas. So this presentation will mostly focus on Dallas. So, Dallas is the 9th largest city in the United States. So it's a pretty big city. It's very well known for business. Many companies that are some of the largest companies in the United States and in the world have their businesses in their headquarters in Dallas, their base. I don't know if anyone knows the American cell phone company AT&T. AT&T has their base in Dallas. American Airlines and Southwest Airlines both have their base in Dallas. And sometimes if you go to the store, even here in Russia, you can find Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper was invented just outside of Dallas, a suburb, so their base is also in Dallas. It's cool. DFW Airport, Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, is one of the largest airports in the world. It covers 70 square kilometers, which is larger than Manhattan in New York City. So think about Times Square, Manhattan, Broadway, all of that. The airport in Dallas is larger than that whole island, than the island of Manhattan. This goes back to everything is bigger in Texas. If we build something, we usually build it pretty big.
Is it larger than JFK or not?
By area, yes. By area, it is larger than JFK. JFK, I believe, is a busier airport, but by area, Dallas is larger. Good question.
That's good comparison, airport to airport.
Yeah, it is a good comparison. Dallas is also home to Texas's major hockey team, the Dallas Stars. I don't know if anyone's a hockey fan there, but when most Americans, not just people in Russia, but when most Americans think of Russia, they think of Texas, they also think of desert. So when they find out that Texas has a hockey team, they're like, oh, ice, Texas, those two things don't really go together. But they do, just here. Dallas also gets snow. Dallas is in the north of Texas, so sometimes they do get snow. Not always, but sometimes. And another interesting piece of information, if not a sad piece of information, probably the most important event in Dallas's history was...
Very notorious city.
What?
Very notorious city.
Yeah, very notorious city. Because on November 22nd, 1963, I'm sure everyone has heard of the American president John F. Kennedy. He was assassinated in Dallas on this date. Dallas still usually tries to kind of honor him every year with some kind of ceremony, because of course they feel very bad that a US president was killed in their city. That's never good. So, but they try to keep the memory alive, which I think is very important. So. Austin. Austin is, why is Austin important to Texas? Again? It is our capital. Austin is such a cool city. Austin is one of my probably 2 favorite cities in Texas. First off, Austin is just gorgeous. It is a beautiful city. If you look at these pictures, there's a really big river that goes through Austin. They have a lot of bridges, water that goes kind of through the city. They have a lot of trees, parks. It's just a really, really pleasant city. Really nice city to go through. So about Austin. Austin has a lot of cool things. One of the things is the largest state capitol building in the United States is the Texas State Capitol in Austin. The Texas State Capitol building, which is that building in the picture on the right, is actually bigger than the United States Capitol building, which we are very happy about, which we are very proud of. It is also one of the technology capitals of the United States. Its nickname is Silicon Hills. In California, you've probably all heard of Silicon Valley. In Austin, they have Silicon Hills. There's a lot of companies like IBM, Google, and Facebook that have bases in Silicon Valley, but also in Austin. Secondary bases in Austin. Austin is home to the only Formula One racetrack in the United States. Does everyone know what Formula One is? Yeah, racing, Formula One racing. I personally don't really care what Formula One racing is. I have never watched it, but because Austin has the only Formula One racetrack in the United States, I'm still going to brag about it and tell you about it. Austin is home to something called the South by Southwest Festival, SXSW, South by Southwest Festival. It started off as, has anyone ever heard of that before? So, South by Southwest is a festival that started off as a music festival. It is not, it's still a music festival, but over the years that it's been in existence has grown into something much more. South by Southwest is held every year in Austin in the spring, usually in March or April. And it is a really, really big event that brings people together to celebrate music, culture, technology, media, film, literature. It's really just kind of a combination of all aspects of human culture and society that they just kind of celebrate at this festival every year in Austin. It's a really, really, really big event. The population of Austin grows by about 15 to 20% during the festival because so many people come to it, which is great for, of course, Austin hotels and tourism and everything. But sometimes local people get a little annoyed because there are so many tourists. But we're going to watch a little video of South by Southwest right here.
I direct short films, I'm a street photographer, and I do sound design.
I'm a mobile app developer and stand-up comedian.
I'm a project manager at a digital agency, and I play in a punk band.
I'm a chef,
CEO,
showrunner, venture capitalist. I own a craft brewery, legislator,
creative director.
I'm presenting my research.
I'm looking for new talent.
I'm here to see what's next.
Connection.
Discovery.
Surprise.
I'm here for the unexpected.
South by Southwest helps creative people achieve their goals. It's our mission to facilitate face-to-face connections, new opportunities, and unexpected discovery through an event that brings together multifaceted people from all walks of life from around the globe. South by Southwest is the intersection of art and technology, inspiration and surprise. Come be a part of one of the most
Diverse.
Collaborative.
Inventive.
communities in the world.
Alright, so that is South by Southwest. It's pretty cool. As you probably saw from the video, if you recognize some of those people, usually they have speakers come during the week. You probably saw the Obamas there. They also have famous actors, actresses come and speak. Other world leaders sometimes come. So it's a very cool, interactive, fun festival. If you're ever in Austin in the springtime, go to South by Southwest.
So it's not only about music, right?
No, no, it's about a lot more than music. Yeah, music is just a part of it.
Why is it called music festival?
Because it started off as a music festival, so they just kept the name. Usually, and so in Texas we still say like South by Southwest Music Festival. Most people though just say South by Southwest. We try and just kind of keep calling it the same name, just for fun. Keep Austin Weird. Keep Austin Weird is the slogan of Austin. People in Austin do their own thing. They do not care what anyone else thinks. Austin is pretty liberal. They're a very democratic, very liberal city. If you know anything about Texas, Texas is very conservative and very Republican. Austin, though, however, is the opposite of that. They're liberal, democratic, they do their own thing. They have their kind of own culture that they keep even inside Texas, which is very fun. Part of the reason that they say keep Austin weird is they have this thing in Austin. It is the largest bat colony in North America, which you might be wondering why I'm telling you about that. I'm telling you about that because most bats live in caves. However, the largest bat colony in North America, Mexico, Canada, and the United States does not live in a cave. It lives in a city. This bat colony lives in the city of Austin. So, I'll show you what that looks like in a second. A large number of bats that live together. American Home Internet. Bats are? Yeah?
Yep.
Yeah, so all of those bats live under a bridge in the city of Austin. There are more bats than birds or people in Austin. Because of that, might sound a little weird, but because of that, Austin doesn't really have mosquitoes or flies because the bats eat all of them, which is really, really nice. I love going to Austin for that reason.
Where
Because
do they live? They usually live in caves.
Yeah, humans.
they usually live in caves, yeah. In Austin, they live under bridges.
But why do they live
Yeah,
there?
On the bridge.
yeah, under bridges.
A nice place.
So,
Free apartments.
yeah, pretty cool. And people in Austin, like, I get that this seems like really weird. Again, keep Austin weird. People in Austin have just gotten used to this. They're just like, oh, there are bats. Like, you look outside and you're like, oh, there are birds. People in Austin are like, oh, there are bats.
Does it happen at night or during the day?
It's-
looks like a day.
It starts during the evening, so maybe around like 5 to 7 p.m. and goes through the night. So it starts when it is day. It does start when it is day. All the bats coming out. Yeah. No, you don't like bats? Okay. There are no bugs though. There are no mosquitoes.
As far as they're in the sky, they're fine. When they jump,
And
scary.
is there any disturbance from these bats for people or not?
No, there
Maybe
isn't.
for the airplanes. No?
Just no more than like birds. Yeah, no, the people are just, in fact, it's actually almost the other way around. People in Austin love to have like tourists come and see the bats come out and fly. So they actually really like the bats because the bats bring a lot of money to Austin since people come to take pictures and look at the bats.
It's a kind of peculiarity.
attraction.
It is, yeah. It's one of those tourist attractions that is kind of a little odd, a little strange, but
Weird, very weird.
yeah, keep Austin weird. All right, San Antonio. San Antonio, has anyone heard of San Antonio before?
Yep.
I talked about San Antonio earlier in this presentation.
Yeah.
What do we know about San Antonio? There's the
was
Alamo
named
San Antonio.
It was named after the general.
No.
That was
No,
Houston.
it's Austin.
Um, there was something about San Antonio. Was it the third city in Texas? The fourth city in Texas? Or was it the first city to be founded in Texas? It was the first, yes. So San Antonio is the 7th largest city in the United States. Second largest in Texas, but 7th largest in the United States. The Alamo is the most visited tourist attraction in Texas, so because of that, San Antonio is the most visited city in Texas. San Antonio is home to something called the Riverwalk. The Riverwalk is, let me see if I can do this. So there's a river that flows, if this is San Antonio, there's a river that flows right through San Antonio, and there's a bunch of little other rivers that go through downtown in San Antonio. So when you walk through San Antonio, there are little rivers all through it. People in San Antonio can take boats to go from one part of the city to another because they have these river things. That's what this is. They'll build like restaurants and cafes on the water right next to these rivers, so you can like go to a restaurant, sit by the water. It's really nice. There's also a lot of bridges that go over it. So San Antonio is a really nice place to walk around at night. Unlike Austin, there are no bats, and there is a really nice river and city that you can see with the water. We kind of joke that San Antonio is kind of like the Venice of Texas. It's a bunch of canals and rivers and boats. All right, San Antonio has a mixture of Spanish and German architecture. If you look at the two pictures on the top, the one on the left is a German cathedral, the one on the right is a Spanish monastery. San Antonio was founded by the Spanish, and because it was founded by the Spanish, it has a lot of old Spanish architecture, Spanish styles. In around 1835, 1836, a lot of Germans started immigrating to San Antonio, and when these Germans came to San Antonio, it was a lot too, it wasn't just a couple, it was a very large amount of Germans immigrated to San Antonio. They brought with them their culture and their architecture styles, so they built things like this cathedral. So San Antonio is a very strange mixture of Spanish and German architecture if you walk through it, which is, I think, is very cool. I think it's awesome.
And why name it San Antonio?
That's a good question. So First off, Texas, because they said that if Texas had, when it was its own country, had a treaty with Germany that if German citizens moved to Texas, they would pay less taxes and get free land. But Texas got to choose where the land was. So San Antonio, they thought needed more people, so they gave Germans land in and around San Antonio, and so that's why San Antonio. And less taxes, so less money you have to pay. San Antonio also, just interesting fact, is the largest concentration of military bases in the United States. So like El Paso, it's also a pretty safe city, which is very cool. Houston. Houston is the largest city in Texas. It is my favorite city. Houston is where I grew up. It is my home. My dad lives in El Paso, but he moved there when I was already in university, so I consider Houston to be my true home in Texas. I love it. It's a very big city, much larger than Austin. Where you can see it right here. Going to watch a short propaganda video about Houston because I can do that to you. So. So that's Houston. As you learned from that video, Houston is the 4th largest city in the United States after New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. It is the 2nd largest port in the United States. It has the largest medical center on the planet. We kind of say that Houston has 2 downtowns, 2 city centers. This is the medical center right here, which is as big as many downtowns in the United States.
Sorry, Robert, I know that Houston is very famous for the clinic for obese people.
For what?
For obese people, fat people.
Really?
Fat people, yeah.
Oh, I did not know
Just a
that.
lot of things on TLC channel
Oh.
about this.
I mean, I'm not super fat. He's not very fat. So, medical center here in Houston, and in the background you have our downtown. The largest rodeo in the world is in Houston. Does everyone know what a rodeo is?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. It is one of the largest oil and gas industries in the world. There's actually a lot of Russians that live in Houston because, as you all know, Russia also has a lot of oil and gas, and Houston and Russia do a lot of business. It is also home to NASA Space Center. Does everyone know what NASA is? The United States Space Program? Yeah. All right. And like St. Petersburg, Houston was also built on a swamp, which I actually don't like that much because it makes it really humid and very hot. So,
Are there many snakes?
there are a lot of snakes, yeah.
And mosquitoes.
And alligators?
And mosquitoes, alligators too. Spanish in Texas. So we learned a little bit about El Paso earlier. In Texas in general, 29% of Texan residents speak Spanish at home. That's almost 1/3 of the population of the state of Texas that's Spanish speaking. Almost anywhere you go in most major Texas cities, you'll find all signs in Spanish and English. Since 1837, so a very long time ago, all laws and government information, websites, voting, anything must be in both Spanish and English. And as of 2007, the state of Texas offers its yearly academic tests, exams in either Spanish or English, which is very cool. In many of the largest cities in Texas, especially San Antonio, Houston, and El Paso, you can live there and live in Spanish-speaking areas and never have to use English. All the government information is in Spanish. Grocery stores that are run by Mexicans just speak Spanish, so you can live in some of these cities and have no use for English, which is kind of cool. Barbecue. Cuisine, we're going to talk about barbecue for a minute. As always, at this part, I say sorry to all the vegetarians in the room, because this will not be pleasant for you.
Are there any?
Any vegetarians? Oh, there's one over there. Oh, sorry to you, that one vegetarian there. All right, so barbecue. No, absolutely not. Do you see how delicious that was? Yeah. All right, so barbecue is a style of Texas cuisine that is very famous and very delicious. It is when meat it's the style of cooking that makes barbecue. Meat is cooked over a very long period of time, very slowly. It makes it very tender, very juicy. We have this expression, falling off the bone, because the meat is so tender. Usually cooked over a type of wood called hickory wood, which the hickory wood and the smoke from it gives the meat a very nice smoky flavor. And it's usually served in or with a kind of sweet tomato sauce. The pictures that you see there in the description that I just gave you is for Texan barbecue. Different regions of the United States have different kinds of barbecue. There is another teacher here from North Carolina who showed me a picture of the barbecue that they have in North Carolina, and I did not know that it was barbecue because it looks very, very different from the barbecue that we have in Texas. So, yeah, Texan barbecue is delicious. Actually, a couple weeks ago, went to Moscow and found Texas barbecue in Moscow, and it was actually like real Texas barbecue. Actually, I'm probably going to go back to Moscow in like a couple weeks or so to get more barbecue. Really need that. It's really good. Another part of Texan cuisine, Tex-Mex. Tex-Mex is the other thing that I really miss in Russia. Tex-Mex is just what it sounds like. It's a mixture of Texas food and Mexican food. It was originally created by people called Tejanos, which just means people that came from Mexico originally or who have Mexican heritage. And they took different things like Mexican tortillas, Mexican styles of cooking, and mixed them with things like Texas meats and spices. So the main ingredients used in Tex-Mex are shredded cheese, meat, which the meat is usually beef or pork. I personally like chicken with my Tex-Mex. Beans, peppers, spices, and flour tortillas. And also tacos, of course, as you can see there. So, all of the ingredients that are here, you can see here and here. Whataburger. Whataburger is Texas McDonald's. Whataburger is a restaurant that was found in Texas in 1950 by Harmon Dobson and Paul Burton. It was found in a city south here called Corpus Christi. Now the headquarters is in, the base is in San Antonio. There are now over 800 Whataburgers, mostly in Texas, but also in some of the other eastern and southwestern states. And it's also my dad's favorite restaurant. My dad loves eating at Whataburger. I'm kind of tired of it, but my dad could go there for days and days and days. We're going to talk about some Texas animals. These are armadillos. Have you guys heard of armadillos before? Guys, armadillos are so sweet. Armadillos are so nice. If you are in any of my classes, like Daria, you have heard me talk about armadillos before and how much I love them. They're just so cute. Like, guys, just look at that. Like, look at its little ears and everything. Their little legs. We're gonna watch a video of an armadillo real quick. There's no information. It's just a video of an armadillo because we need to watch a video of an armadillo. Like, this needs to happen. Does everyone see this armadillo? It's trying to find food now. I really want to pet armadillo. I love pet armadillos so much. So armadillos are one of the main symbols of Texas. We have a couple animals which are the symbols of Texas. I'll talk about all of them. Armadillos are one. Armadillos can be found pretty much everywhere in Texas. Whether it's like over here where it's kind of deserty or over here where there's more forest. We even have them in Houston. My brother knows that I love armadillos. He lives in Houston, and whenever he is walking around and finds an armadillo, he tries to take a video or a picture to send to me because he knows I love them. Yeah, armadillos are just so cool. Some people actually do have armadillos as pets in Texas. They're just, I mean, who wouldn't want that as a pet? Like, really? Texas Longhorns. Texas Longhorns are a specific type of cattle that we have, cattle and bull, that we have in Texas. You can probably guess why they are called Longhorns. It is because they have very long horns. They also have a very unique coloring. They have that shade of orange that you see, that they usually have colored. Longhorns are also the symbol of the largest university in Texas, the University of Texas, which is also one of the largest universities in the United States. And their school color is the color of longhorns, white and this kind of orange. Ooh, also, does everyone remember the barbecue that I talked about earlier? Yeah, those cattle, those are so delicious. These things are really tasty. Rattlesnakes. Rattlesnakes are the next most well-known symbol of Texas, probably. Does everyone know what a rattle is? A rattle is this little thing right here. Yeah. So rattlesnakes are very dangerous. They're very poisonous. When you get close to a rattlesnake, they shake this rattle right here, and you can hear it so that you know to stay away from them. If you grow up in Texas, at some point during your childhood, either at home or at school, someone will play for you a sound that the rattle makes so that you know, if you hear that, to stay away from it. This is the sound that if you grow up in Texas, you will hear. All Texans know that if they hear that sound, you go the opposite direction. You go in the other direction. You do not go closer to that sound.
Is it really so that some people in Texas keep keep rattlesnakes in their houses to protect their houses from robbers?
I don't think so.
They have recordings of the sound.
Yeah, that's probably better. Yeah, they just play recording.
Much safer.
Yeah, much safer, much easier. Yeah. So those are rattlesnakes. If you hear that sound anywhere, even in Russia, don't go near it. You don't have rattlesnakes.
Do you really can meet a rattlesnake in the city, like not somewhere in the desert or in the city? Or
So they are mostly in the desert. We do not have rattlesnakes in this part of Texas. So we don't have them in Houston. They have them here. You could probably see one sometimes in El Paso. Not very often. They usually stay outside of cities.
Yeah.
But if you go anywhere outside of El Paso, you could probably find a
So
rattlesnake.
usually you can meet them outside of city.
Yeah, usually outside the city. Yeah, so you can still go to
Stay away
Texas.
from people.
Yeah.
No, stay no there.
Yeah, no, they're usually not in cities. Don't worry about that. So in East Texas, we have alligators. West Texas has rattlesnakes. That's what they're scared of. And East Texas, we have alligators. Luckily, alligators are usually easier to avoid than rattlesnakes because they are very big. If you are walking and you see this, usually you go the other way. You don't go closer to it. Alligators don't go on land like that very often. This one's just taking like an excursion, like a field trip. I don't know where he's going. Usually they stay in the water. When I was little, my dad would take my brother and I to parks and would always say, okay, don't go near the water. Do not go near the water. Alligators in East Texas are outside of cities, and they're usually not where any tourists go, unlike Florida. So we haven't had anyone die from an alligator in decades in Texas. Because all of the locals know, don't go near the water, stay away from the alligators, and tourists don't go really outside of the city to where alligators are, so it's not a huge issue. I also like alligators. I think alligators are cool. Javelinas. Javelinas are little pigs, little hairy pigs. They're like this big that we have in this part of Texas. They're really cute. Not as cute as armadillos, but they're very cute. Javelinas are almost completely blind. They almost cannot see. They find food and stay safe by listening. Their hearing is very, very, very strong. They are blind, but if you get within 10, 15 feet of a javelina, they will hear you and run away. So, some people also hunt javelinas. I don't know why, because they're really cute, but some people do that too. And other animals that we have in Texas. Possum, raccoon, skunk, and ring-tailed cat. Everyone knows what all of these are? Yes?
Especially skunks.
Yeah, skunks. Skunks are cool. Don't get near them, but they're cool. All right, last video that I have for you, and last thing we're going to talk about is Texas pride.
Everything's bigger in Texas, including the state pride. While it won't take long for a Texan to let you know where they're from, here's 3 easy ways to spot someone who's lived in the Lone Star State.
Where's the chips and salsa?
What are you talking about, Jeff? We haven't even ordered them.
This is a Mexican restaurant. They are at the table when you arrive.
What?
Yeah.
That's a thing?
Yes. Texas is take its oil, its Blue Bell, and its breakfast tacos and get out of the U.S.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the Republic of Texas.
Yes.
You know, Texas State Capitol's building is bigger than the U.S. Capitol building.
Okay.
And Texas. And Texas economy is bigger than South Korea and Australia.
Awesome.
And Whataburger is better than In-N-Out.
Okay, we get it. You get the idea. What other qualities have you noticed about people from the Lone Star State? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to...
So, we have this concept in Texas, this philosophy called Texas pride. This is how we see ourselves in Texas. There is Texas and not Texas. We are a very proud people. We are very proud because we had to fight for our independence many years ago. We have a very strong economy. We try and keep our culture very alive. And really, we just like that we're from Texas. Unfortunately, because of this, most other states in the United States do not like us. It happens, but we're very happy that we are us. So. And that is the presentation. Thank you, everyone.